Hi, my name is Mike, and I'm here to read a comic. And today's comic is Supergirl, issue number 10, dated October 1974. And before I get into the comic, I'm going to talk a little bit about the movie. I had just seen the movie yesterday in 3D. It was an interesting experience. I don't know if I really liked the film, but I didn't dislike it either. The story was fine. I was kept engaged. The portrayal of Supergirl kind of did throw me for a loop there, because I felt more like I was watching Courtney Love than anything else. That Supergirl was way different than this Supergirl. And I didn't necessarily mind, say, the more adult or cynical or darker Supergirl. This Supergirl's really dark. But I wasn't a huge fan of it either. I was maybe fine with the more optimistic view of Superman. I get the idea that DC doesn't really want to go kind of like a bright, lighter tone because they have Batman. And I think they're worried that if they start going with a kind of a lighter tone, they won't be able to make those dark Batman movies. But I'm not sure myself. It's not a bad film. It's interesting. It's a darker version of Guardians of the Galaxy. So they're kind of setting up that universe. So even if you don't necessarily care for this interpretation of Supergirl, I would recommend asking yourself, do I want to see other DC characters in this universe? And I actually would not mind that. So overall, I'm going to give it a slight positive, but just be warned that the Supergirl that you see there is not the Supergirl you're going to see in this issue. And in this issue, Supergirl is paired off with Prez. Prez was a new character that was introduced into DC. I think the title only lasted 4 issues. I do remember liking it. I would not have liked it back then because the satire that I think Joe Simon was going for would have been over my head. But as an adult, I really kind of enjoy those issues of Prez. Very optimistic. Prez was based on a movie called Wild in the Streets, which basically was a teenage overthrow of the United States of America. I think it was Richard Pryor's film debut, although he's not the star or focus of the film. But I would recommend watching it. It is an interesting time capsule. So anyway, getting back to the action here, we see Supergirl. She is in flight, and she is holding hands with Prez. And Prez is not enjoying this flight here. It's not like Superman and Lois Lane in that first movie. Prez is saying, hey, I kind of need you here. Don't drop me. But Supergirl says she has her orders. And she does identify him as Prez. So she's just simply following orders. So I'm going to get into it. And we are told that the title of this story is Death of a Prez. And the creative team is the same. It's Carrie Bates who wrote this, and it's Art Saff and Vince Coletta who handled the art. There's an A and B story. So both stories are kind of like abruptly edited. The B story is a kick in the nuts. It reminds me of the film The Last American Virgin, where for 92 minutes, it's basically a normal, 1980s teenage sex comedy. Then the last minute, the movie kicks you in the balls. And that B story is very similar to that. because it was actually a fairly good story. Then it takes this really dark turn. So I'm going to take a look at the splash page. We see Supergirl. It looks like she's on top of the Empire State Building based on the design. She's holding Prez clearly against his will. She's being followed by jet fighters here. So, these conservative white male pilots are determined to save, their liberal teenage president here. And this kind of has a little bit of a callback to King Kong. And we see that Supergirl is telling Prez, nothing can stop me from carrying out my orders to let you go now, Prez. And so this is very typical of DC at the time to kind of give a summary of the story that is coming up. I'm going to turn the page. So the action starts at Vanderdyke U. Linda Davins is watching TV with her friends, I guess in the common room. And there's a news report that Prez is going to be speaking at a local supermarket in Rosedale. Prez is here. The crowd is very excited. They like their young teenage president who's wearing a red sweater. And what Prez is concerned about are food prices. Yep, food prices. So I got to give Carrie Bates a little tip there. Prez is saying, save the cheers until I can bring food prices down, folks. There's got to be a reason for their skyrocketing. I'll find it before a hot dog costs as much as a steak. So we can see Prez here, who's an actual president who cares about food prices. And food prices, yes, there was a lot of inflation in the mid-'70s, largely due to the oil embargoes by OPEC. They had two of them, actually, in the mid-'70s. And, the skyrocketing cost of transportation kind of just drove food prices up. So Prez is going to this supermarket. He's going to berate the manager as to why they're marking up the prices so much. Prez he's pressing the flesh with the crowd here, just shaking hand after hand. Yeah, some of these guys are really into that. I shook Bill Clinton's hand once. He had published his autobiography. I was determined to get a autographed copy of it because I knew I could sell it on eBay for a lot of money. I had spent the entire day online, and it was raining sometimes, but finally, I got my chance to come face to face with the ex-president. He just kind of politely just brought his hand out, and I shook it, and he signed the book, and I said thank you, and I left. However, Linda Davins sees something that bothers her. And then she quickly scurries out of the common room because apparently something on this newscast had alerted her to some type of danger. Going to turn the page. Linda, by the way, is wearing red and white striped pants. So anyway, she turns into Supergirl, and she's flying directly to the supermarket where, Prez is kind of having his little impromptu event. She's thinking to herself that, people really dig Prez. They really love this guy. However, there's always that one guy who's just going to spoil it. And this is what Supergirl is thinking. So anyway, we see this middle-aged balding man. He's reaching out for Prez's hand. He's saying how much he really likes him. And then suddenly Supergirl grabs it. And it turns out that the man was armed, and he was planning on assassinating Prez here. The man doesn't understand how Supergirl was able to find this out. Supergirl said, yeah, I just used my X-ray vision on the TV. I'm pretty sure that even in the DC universe, X-rays don't work that way. If they did, you can just simply take a picture of me, then take a picture of the X-ray, and it would work just as well. But nevertheless, this is what Carrie Bates is spoon-feeding the audience. Going to turn the page. So anyway, the suspect is the culprit, I should say, because we know he's guilty. He's handcuffed and he's being led away. And we see Supergirl. She's talking to Prez. And, she's warning Prez, hey, I'm really into you, but there's a lot of guys out there like that, and you really need to be careful. Prez is aware of this, but he also says that he wants to be a man of the people. So this requires him to go out into those crowds. And if he has to take a chance on something bad happening, he has to risk it. Because, he's Prez. He's not the president. He's Prez. That has a very personal connotation. And he feels this so strongly with the American public. Then we see a young African-American kid here. He looks about to be 8. And he's tugging on Prez's red sweater here, which might have been the original red cap. This is the total opposite. This is why Trump went with the red cap, because he remembered that Prez. And he said, damn it, when he was president, I hated it. So anyway, the little kid is telling Prez that he has a watch and it doesn't work. And what had happened was that his father, quote, died in Vietnam. You didn't die in Vietnam if you were an American there. You were killed. But nevertheless, he uses that word. And the thing is that the watch stopped working when his father died. And I guess it's very similar to, I think, Pulp Fiction. Maybe Christopher Walken's had this watch up his butt for 5 years in getting back from that POW camp. But nevertheless, Prez is saying, listen, even though you don't vote for me, you're one of my constituents, and I'm really good with clocks. So let me take a look at it. So Prez, he's just kind of, this is kind of like one of those watches that would be on a chain. I don't know what they call it with the flip. So anyway, Prez is kind of messing around with the watch. Supergirl is really impressed. This is one of the things I noticed about these Supergirl issues is that if there's a young guy there, she's really impressed with him. And then Prez gets the watch to work again. So the watch is working. His father's still dead, but God damn it, that watch is working. Oh, by the way, Supergirl, she's just smiling at this kid when he's talking about Vietnam. Maybe you can kind of do something about that. But the United States government probably would not want her to, because if she knew the facts, she might not necessarily go along with American policy. Can turn the page? So anyway, Supergirl, she is a true believer. She is saying the country needs you, Prez. And, there are cranks everywhere. So I want you to be careful, because I want to see this country succeed. And I think you're the man to do it. Prez is saying, listen, he's not going to be a turtle. He's not going to turn into Mitch McConnell. And, he can't hide because he is the Prez. So anyway, but Prez is aware that he does need to be cautious. It says here that he doesn't really want to give any impromptu speeches at this point, because he wants to do some action. And one of the actions is that he wants clean air. So he wants to improve the environment, which strangely is something that presidents have to fight to do. We have a large portions of our population who is fine with being poisoned, even though I'm sure they don't look at it that way. But nevertheless, cleaning the environment is something that people will not necessarily appreciate, because they'll think, oh, I missed out on a job because of that. So anyway, Supergirl flies off. She says, right on, Prez. So she's totally on board with his agenda. And she's watching Prez drive off, the presidential caravan. And she's saying, If love can steer this country back on the right track, Prez can do it if he's not derailed. So anyway, so Prez's motorcade is going through this very rural area. This is definitely the long way to the airport. And it turns out there's this auction of antique clocks, which is right up, Prez's alley. Prez loves clocks. He always knows what time it is. And he loves fixing clocks. So this is sort of his joy. And he says, you know what, I have to stop here. I absolutely have to stop here. And I have to find that one clock that doesn't work so I can fix it. Prez is a fixer. You can turn the page. So anyway, we see kind of this barn motif that you would see in kind of like this rustic Vermont setting. And the place is just filled with clocks. They're all working though. So Prez is feeling a little out of place here. He's hold it. There's nothing here I can fix. However, there is that one clock in the corner that isn't working, and Prez says that he's going to bid on this clock. So he can challenge himself and see if he can fix this like he can fix the country. However, the clock is immediately taken out of his hands, and it turns out that it's Supergirl. And Supergirl smashes through the roof. Prez is wondering what's going on. Supergirl says, listen, I'm going to outbid you on this clock, and I'll show you why. And it turns out that Supergirl was, kind of wanted to really make sure Prez was safe. So she kept an eye on Prez. It turned out that there was a bomb in that particular clock. So the person who set the bomb knew that Prez could not resist an auction of clocks and that he could not resist buying one that didn't work. I'm going to turn the page. So we see Prez here. He's surrounded by cameras, but he's not surrounded by Secret Service. And he's saying, this is basically the third time you've saved me today. And I really appreciate it, but I'm gonna get to work and justify your faith in me. Supergirl is noticing a pattern, saying 3 assassination attempts. How are your poll numbers? Because she's kind of concerned that there's something going on here, and it turns out there's a secret lab, and we see 2 individuals. We see this very stylishly dressed individual here. He kind of looks like one of those Russian barons. And he's speaking to an old woman here who is Hepzibah. And she's clearly a witch. And what's going on is that the man here, he is watching Supergirl from afar. He's seeing Supergirl carrying Prez because she's going to take him directly to the White House. She's saying, listen, Secret Service guys, kind of don't trust them. Maybe Biden had something there. And I'm going to take you home directly to the White House. Then we turns out that these are the individuals who are behind the assassination attempt of Prez. And it turns out that these individuals were aware that Supergirl was going to be involved. So the 3 attempts so far have been kind of a ruse. And the ruse is basically to have Supergirl spend as much time with Prez as possible. And the best way she can spend that time with him is to protect him from obvious assassination attempts. Because Supergirl mentioned herself that she sees a pattern here. And what this guy does is that he's able to master science and witchcraft. So he's able to merge the two. So he's using this old hag who is a witch, and she takes a voodoo doll of Supergirl. She takes the needle, she puts it through the doll's head, and at this point, this means that her will become Supergirl's will, and they know that she is currently carrying Prez at this moment. And her orders are to kill Prez. I'm going to turn the page. So anyway, that's one aspect of the plan. That's the supernatural plan, part of the plan, I should say. Next is the scientific one, and apparently there's a super laser. It's kind of like, Dr. Evil type laser. The laser is going to be aimed at Supergirl's head, her cranium. So the combination of using the voodoo doll and this specially designed laser, both of those together will put Supergirl under their control, which is what we saw on the cover. Same way we go back to the city, Supergirl and Prez here. Supergirl is feeling a little strange here. She feels like there's some dark force tracking her. And what she's going to do is she's going to take a bit of a rest here, but she's going to do it on top of this large building. Now, Metropolis is an analog to Chicago, so I think the tallest building there is the Sears building. I'm not sure, but this might be the Sears building. And Supergirl's talking about how there's a problem with her brain, and she's getting a command to delete Prez from the census, and Prez here is just dangling helplessly. Gonna turn the page. So anyway, we see the Air Force has kind of noticed that, hey, we don't know where Prez is. Supergirl kind of flew off with her. We kind of have to pay attention to where the president is. So it looks like the Air Force had sent a couple of jet fighters to see what's going on. They decide to fire on Supergirl, which is weird because Supergirl... She doesn't have an issue with bullets. However, Prez does. So who knows? Maybe they intentionally did this. But nevertheless, Supergirl flies off before these Air Force bullets, munitions can touch them. Although the civilians below are not as lucky. Then we see Prez. He's being flown over what looks like the George Washington Bridge. These guys did not care that much about accuracy. They were going to draw what they were familiar with. So anyway, we see Supergirl then dropping Prez, presumably into the Hudson River. And I'm going to turn the page. Should note that Prez was pretty quiet during that whole thing, and that does work into the story. So anyway, our evil, billionaire entrepreneur, we'll call him Elon Sr., the probably the less evil version. He sees that his laser has been melted. So it's completely melted at this point. And then Supergirl, she bursts in and she tackles our baddie along with the henchman here. It turned out that Supergirl, this is how they wrap up the story, one panel. She was using her X-ray vision, and then she happened to see this, and she kind of put two and two together. And it turns out what happened was that she didn't actually drop Prez into the river. That was a dummy because she knew she was being watched. And this is how they wrap it up. Good old Carrie Bates. So anyway, Prez is addressing the nation. He's telling the world about this. And again, this plays into the thing where Linda Davin, Supergirl, she doesn't have to hide anymore. In Adventure Comics, her identity was hidden. In Supergirl, she is not. She is out there. She is standing next to Prez. She's being seen by millions as the hero. And Supergirl, when she's asked by Prez how does she feel, she's saying, I got a slight headache, but it went away quickly. So presumably she took that needle out of that voodoo doll. And yeah, that's it. Because again, she's a Kryptonian, so magic does affect her in an adverse way. So I'm going to get into the B story. The story does get a little disturbing at times, and it's called Her Brother's Keeper. The creative team is the same, and we'll take a look at this splash page. Normally the B story didn't have a splash page because it was presumably a little shorter than the main story, but in this case there's a splash page here. And we see a super lad, as he is called. And he is pointing a ray gun, at both Supergirl and a man, a really creepy looking guy. I'm sure Chris Hansen has spoken to this guy more than once, who's pointing to Supergirl and saying, listen, I'm your creator. You want to shoot her. And Supergirl's making the case, no, super lad, you don't want to kill your own sister. So this is the teaser here for this story, Her Brother's Keeper. So anyway, we go to Vanderdyke University, and we are greeted to some human cells, and a little bit of kind of like educational background for the readers that basically from one single human cell we are the accumulation of that. So it's kind of teaching the kids a little about microbiology. And it turns out that this is a scientist professor at Vander U, and he's being visited by Supergirl. But Supergirl is thinking to herself that I know this guy and he knows me as Linda Davins. So this is an individual that Supergirl is already impressed with. Like I had mentioned, she tended to gravitate toward men. Who knows? Maybe she had some type of connection with this older man. Definitely not romantic. She's not thinking that, but nevertheless, she respects this man. And apparently, the professor had asked Linda, "Can you get in contact with Supergirl?" So it was sort of known. I guess it obviously helps with the storytelling. If say the secret identity it's known that they can get in touch with the hero. Same thing. Everyone knew that if you needed to talk to Superman, you have to go through his gatekeeper, Clark Kent, first. And this is similar here. So somehow it became known that Linda Davins is the woman who can, or the young lady who can produce Supergirl. So anyway, the professor's talking to Supergirl, and he's saying that, listen, this cell stuff, it's great. It's kind of good. And, I can make a lot of money and with my research into cells, but that's the problem. I kind of don't have money, and I need kind of some money here. And, you're kind of a superpowered individual, and, I figure you're kind of a rainmaker. Supergirl, she catches the hint. However, she has a creed. And her creed is that she does not bestow wealth to private individuals. She'll save you from a fire, but she's not there to help pay your bills. So the thing is, even though Supergirl likes this professor, likes his work, says that this work could help humanity, I'm not going to underwrite it. You talk to Mark Cuban. You don't talk to me. But then suddenly there's an issue with the microscope, and it starts to go haywire, and then it short circuits and it explodes. Gonna turn the page. I think I liked the art better in the first story. I think Supergirl was drawn prettier. But this art's a little Not as good as the first story. So Supergirl sees that the microscope is about to explode. And what she does is that she uses her cape to cover up and muffle this explosion. So at this point, it's just really a loud noise. But any damage is localized to the microscope. And the rest of the lab that has millions of dollars worth of equipment is safe, along with the doctor. Although the university cares about the equipment and the doctor in the same order I originally gave. So anyway, Supergirl looking really cute and sexy here as she's putting her cape back on. She's saying, "Don't worry about it, Doc. I'll return soon and I'll help rebuild that microscope. So the university doesn't, lose any money. But I'm not going to give you any money either." Now the doctor here, he is appreciative in a very passive-aggressive way. He says, "I owe you my life, but, without any money, my life's really not worth anything. So you didn't really help me, did you?" So this doctor's kind of a weasel here. Supergirl is saying, "Listen, a human life is worth more than equipment. It's worth more than money. So me saving you is worth more than me giving you any type of money. So, but I'll talk to the board of governors and I'll see what I can do. Hey, they'll tell me the check is in the mail and I'll believe it." However, it turns out the doctor has other ideas, and it seems like he actually did get something out of Supergirl, but we don't know what it is. But as Supergirl is flying off, she feels pain. This was something that was also in the movie. Supergirl, she does feel. One of the issues, I didn't really correctly talk about the Supergirl movie because I'm a little inebriated. But anyway, I found it to be an intelligent script. It was strange because rather than a huge, planetary event, it was sort of this story about revenge. And it was really kind of a personal story where Supergirl, she learns to be heroic, and she overcomes that kind of Courtney Love type of persona that she has for most of the film. There was a lot of Courtney L, but not a lot of Kara L. The movie does do a good job in explaining why things are. Why is Supergirl on a planet with a red sun, knowing that it depowers her, and that's because the alcohol hits better. And as I was mentioning, one of the things that I had a problem with was it was hard to tell how powerful she was at any one time, because her power set kind of was on a sliding scale based on what sun she was on. So the movie starts with her originally on a planet with a red sun, where she retains a little bit of her power, but not a whole lot. But then as she moves away from that planet, she heads to planets with yellow suns. Then she grows more powerful, but it was hard for me to tell exactly how strong she was, how strong her opponents were. We didn't get a whole lot of the villain here. He seemed kind of like a Russian, a member of the Russian mafia. And I felt that kind of hurt the film. We spent a little bit too much time with Supergirl. Maybe we should have spent more time with that guy. So anyway, Supergirl, she feels pain, but she's thinking it's her imagination, which is odd. She's someone who does not feel pain. So when she's feeling pain, she should be panicking rather than just kind of ignoring it and thinking it's going to go away. Gonna turn the page. So we go back to the doctor's laboratory. Apparently, the explosion with the microscope was a diversion. And there was actually a super laser that was trained on her. And when Supergirl used her cape to muffle the explosion, the laser was activated and it hit her on her backhand. And apparently it was able to extract a single cell from Supergirl's body. So, even though she's invulnerable, this laser was powerful enough to at least get one of those Kryptonian cells loose here. The doctor, he recovered the cell, and he's going to use the cell to what he calls create a synthetic duplication of Supergirl. So he's going into cloning. So cloning was something that was really big in the 1970s. It was one of those weird things where the public, it had captured its imagination in kind of this strange, scary way, similar to the Bermuda Triangle or quicksand. That was the stuff we were frightened of in the 1970s. So this guy is going to engage in cloning, even though they're not calling it cloning. And the clone is referred to as a synthetic person, which is not true, because that's kind of not how cloning works. The process is synthetic, but the person is not. So anyway, this is his plan, and he has kind of this incubator device here where Supergirl, or this clone with Supergirl cells, is going to grow and incubate. And it kind of looks like the setup when the Jackal cloned Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker. There were similar tubes. So anyway, this process is taking a couple hours. The dialogue balloon is referring to this as artificial life. This is actually kind of important when we get to the end of the story, that words like synthetic and artificial are used. So anyway, this guy's going through mad scientist stroking here. He's saying, this is Dr. Frankenstein at this point. And he realizes that he created life, and he created life that is really powerful, and it's going to make him invincible. I'm going to turn the page. So the next day, we see Linda Davins. She's on campus. She's going to class. Then she sees some of her students who are questionably dressed as her. Although these outfits aren't bad for the most part. They see something in the sky, and they're asking, is it a bird? Is it a plane? Is it Superman? Or is it Supergirl? They don't know. And then we see Linda Davins, beautifully drawn here, and she's taking a look with her telescopic vision, and she sees something that she can't believe. So this is enough for her to change into Supergirl. And she does this behind some bushes. Apparently, she wants to protect her identity, but at the same time, this issue is important enough that she'll risk, changing outside rather than doing it safely inside. She really wants to check this out fast. And it turns out she sees an individual flying who kind of bears a strong resemblance to someone in the Superman family. And she names him Super Lad. So at this point, this poor kid, he's not even given agency to name himself. Supergirl has already decided that his munker is Super Lad. And she calls out saying, "Stop, who are you? I just named you, but tell me what you think you are called." Super Lad says, "Come closer, Supergirl. Take a good look, and you'll see." And Supergirl feels a great deal of familiarity with this individual. And the individual is telling her that we are twins. We are one of the same. And Supergirl is really surprised by this. She realizes that she's looking at an identical twin that she never knew she had. I'm going to turn the page. It turns out the kid, Super Lad, he's explaining to Supergirl that if you were a boy, you would look like me. So basically, Super Lad is the opposite gender of what Supergirl would have been. Supergirl says, "Wow, hey, I'm a good-looking guy. If I were a guy, where did you come from?" But he doesn't explain. He just flies off. Supergirl, she's a little confused about this odd exchange because it wasn't a negative exchange, but she doesn't know what to make of it. So she's just kind of patiently following Super Lad. Super Lad comes back. He has 2 huge bundles of cash with him. Supergirl recognizes that these 2 huge bundles of cash came from a bank. And she's asking, what's up, bro? And Super Lad says, oh, yeah, I just robbed the bank. Hey, I need, kind of need some cash here. And, I just decided to grab some. Supergirl admonishes him for doing that. She uses her heat vision to force Super Lad to let go of the bags. So at this point, this heat vision is powerful enough to affect a Kryptonian, similar to how Medusa's power was able to affect Medusa. Supergirl doesn't really understand Super Lad's naivety. He's genuinely confused as to why Supergirl wants to stop him. Supergirl is saying, listen, that sounds like a stupid question. Now, we were told that there's no such thing as stupid questions, but you're the exception. That's a stupid question. So the bags of money, they're dropping. Supergirl's going to catch them because, hey, she's concerned about the 1%, just like all DC superheroes. Super Lad doesn't understand this. None of this is making sense to him, and he wants answers from Supergirl, and he was totally 100% honest and earnest. Why are you stopping me? I'm going to turn the page. Super Lad uses his super breath, kind of throws Supergirl in a loop here. She lets go of the bag. She's twirling around at this point. The bags have hit the ground, so both of them are going for it. Again, Super Lad is asking the question, why are you stopping me? I don't understand what's going on here. Supergirl realizes that he's being honest, because originally Supergirl thought he was being a wise ass. But now she realizes that this guy's being honest. He truly doesn't understand what he did. Supergirl, this is a quick thing. She apparently got out of view, out of the comic panel. Then she went underground, and she was able to sandbag Super Lad coming up to the surface. I have no idea why she wasted her time doing that. Super Lad, he's just simply asking her a question. Why are we doing this? Supergirl realizes that he can't tell the difference between right and wrong. But the thing is that she still has a formidable opponent on her hands. She basically has her male duplicate, and he strikes at the ground below Supergirl. This creates a fission in the earth, and that's taking Supergirl down with it. Gonna turn the page. So anyway, Supergirl does fall into this sinkhole, but she quickly gets out of it. She's confused as to why Super Lad is confused. She doesn't understand why he's so naive, and she's thinking that he's clearly obeying orders from someone who doesn't have his best interest at heart, and probably a real crook. So anyway, Supergirl, she reaches the surface. She sees the money sacks are gone, and she sees Super Lad is gone, and there's no trace of them. So she has no real way of following them because she can't really follow heat signatures at this point. However, as she's flying around, she's noticing a $100 bill floating in the air. and there's a trail of them. So obviously one or both of the sacks, they're bleeding money at this point, and this green trail is what Supergirl is going to follow to catch up with Superlad. So anyway, we go back to Vander U. We go back to the laboratory. The doctor is commending Superlad, saying, "Listen, you did a great job there." But Superlad is confused. He encountered his twin sister, so to speak. He recognized her, but he didn't understand some of the things she was talking about. And he's talking about things like right and wrong. Like, what's the difference between the two of them? The doctor, he's saying, look, what's the difference between the two of them? Look at all this money I have on this table. That's the difference between right and wrong. And that's all you need to know. And you don't worry about that. You worry about getting Daddy some of this nice green paper. Gonna turn the page. So anyway, Superlad won't let the issue go because he's still wondering what's right and wrong. Because Supergirl is basically a good, decent person at heart. And that means Superlad is a good, decent person at heart. He hasn't been taught the difference, but his moral compass is still attuned that he knows that there is something wrong with what's going on in their heads. Or what's going on in his head, I should say. He says he knows he's different from others, but he doesn't really understand why. And he's asking, where did I come from? The doctor, he realizes that he's going to have to be honest with Superlad. And he just basically says, listen, I cloned you. I took a single cell from Supergirl, and from that single cell, I was able to incubate it so that it's you. Superlad, he calls himself a synthetic being, although he does with a question mark. Honestly, he's not. I mean, it was a synthetic process, but the cell was real. It's, a Kryptonian cell, and he grew from that single cell, as we all do. Although it's two cells coming together. But anyway, it's the same idea. The doctor is validating this idea that he is a synthetic life, and he's saying, hey, you're synthetic, but hey, I did a great job in creating you. Can't you think about that? He's asking why he's a boy and not a girl. The doctor is saying that, hey, there was a malfunction, and there was a genetic mix-up, and that's why you're a boy. So to even dump more on this poor kid, you're telling him he's synthetic, and then you're telling him that the gender that you are, it was due to a malfunction. So this guy's really screwing over this kid here. Then we see Supergirl. She bursts into the laboratory. And the doctor, he doesn't understand how Supergirl found them, and it was the dollar bills. It had created a trail. She, obviously using her super hearing, she overheard parts of the conversation, and she was able to put two and two together and figure out what's going on. So Supergirl is completely up to date here at this point. Gonna turn the page. Okay, so this is the point where the reader gets kicked in the nuts. And this includes the female readers who get kicked there. So anyway, Superlad, he takes a hold of the laser gun and he points it at Supergirl. And he tells Supergirl, leave. I cannot let you harm my creator. So the thing is that Superlad, on one hand, he wants to protect his creator, but on the other hand, he wants to give Supergirl an out. He doesn't want to use the gun on her. But he'll feel the need if the doctor is harmed. The doctor is thrilled about this. His conditioning has won out over Super Lad's, natural moral compass, and he's ordering him to kill Supergirl. We know this laser is powerful enough to get a cell off of Supergirl. So this laser is powerful enough to put a hole into her. Supergirl, she's saying, listen, your creator is the evil one. He's teaching you how to kill at this point. Don't listen to him anymore. The doctor's saying, listen to me, kill Supergirl. He's going through this tug of war. He doesn't know which one to listen to. The doctor's saying, pull the trigger, destroy Supergirl. Supergirl's saying, put that gun down. It's the right thing to do. So this is where the reader gets kicked in the nuts. Super Lad turns the gun on himself, and he self-deletes himself. But before he does, he says farewell, Super Twin. And Super Lad is no more. The dust has dispersed, and the doctor doesn't understand what had just happened. Supergirl says Super Lad couldn't choose between his inventor or his genetic twin, so he chose to annihilate himself instead. You manufactured synthetic life, but you couldn't manufacture evil. And this is the end of the story. You just got to feel for poor Super Lad here. And we're told that the new adventures of Supergirl are going to be appearing in the Superman family, issue number 168. So that's when Supergirl migrated into the larger Superman family. There was still a market for Superman characters that were sort of on the peripheral. Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen. There were kids who wanted to know what's the sidekick's point of view of a story. And, Supergirl did have fans, not enough to maintain the title, but enough that they would invest in new stories, but they would do it in the larger reprint of the Superman family. That's the end of the story. So I'm going to go into the letters page, Super Female. The first letter is for the most part pretty complimentary. But the thing is, he has a question about Supergirl's motivation in Supergirl 6. And that was an issue that I covered, but I don't really remember. And that basically Supergirl was kind of going through kind of a coping crisis where the situation was getting too much for her. And she had difficult kind of coping with the situation. The writer is saying, listen, I kind of like that, where, there is some hesitation from the hero and some thought, but don't go too crazy about this, because, he doesn't want Supergirl to be like worried about, her outfit or her hosiery, during a battle. So he's worried about that. Editorial saying, we would never do that. That yes, we do want to examine, say, some of the more emotional or psychological issues of being in that type of situation, but we're not going to overdo it. And they also mentioned the fact that Superman and Supergirl are different in that Superman always had his powers. He always, from his earliest memories, he always had those Superman powers, whereas Kara, she was actually a regular Kryptonian for a large portion of her life, and she never had these superpowers. So the responsibility of using these powers is something kind of new to her. So that's something that that Carrie Bates did want to kind of examine, along with having Linda Davins in situations where she can shine in public. The next letter is from Barry. He's also from Brooklyn, and he liked the cover, and he really enjoyed the artwork. He thought it was a really good story, and he even liked Melba. So he's just saying, hey, keep up the great work. Editorial says, hey, thank you. Next letter is from Will. He's from New Jersey. He likes the use of relevant stories because gangs were starting to become a real issue in the 1970s. And the writer is saying, listen, you're focusing on issues that are affecting people today, and I kind of appreciate that. Yeah, and editorial is saying, listen, Arnold Drake, when he wrote that story, he wanted to focus on the relative privileged lives of the students of Vander University compared to those that were living in, quote, the slums. So this was an aspect that the writer wanted to focus on, and they're thanking the reader here for appreciating that. They said, listen, Arnold thought you guys would like to read this, and you're showing him that he was right. The next one is from Terry. She's from Nebraska, or he's from Nebraska. A lot of boys were writing into this comic. He's asking she's asking whether it's possible to get poster-size images of the covers, which is probably something they can do today. There's no way that they could have done that back then with the printing techniques. It would be something really great. I would have loved posters based on DC comic covers. And editorial saying that they often get questions like this. And it's not just simply, asking for a cover. Some people ask, is it possible to get this panel in kind of poster size, kind of like what Roy Lichtenstein was doing? But editorial is saying, or specifically Alan Asherman, is saying that it's something that we don't do, and that if you want DC posters, you need to go to places where they sell the merchandise. So basically, he's saying whatever we merchandise for sale at the retail level is all that we can do for you. And that's it. So that is my review and breakdown of Supergirl number 10, and my broken down talk of this new Supergirl movie. And I hope to have more reviews up soon. Bye.